Hello, everybody, to this Spotlight studio session about ethical considerations in clinical endoscopy trials from a health policy perspective. I welcome you, the audience, and I welcome our guest for today. Jasna, very nice to have you here in Berlin. You came all the way with the car from Brussels, which is encouraging in itself. So, Jasna, you are Jasna Karacic. You're a PhD. You have a lot of titles, so I need to read this. So you are a counselor for the European Union Minister of Health, and you're also the head of the Health Diplomacy Unit at the European Union, and you're an assistant professor at the Global Diplomatic Academy. Impressive. So welcome to the ESGE Days.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here, and I'm really honored to share my sights from political diplomatic work to this important topic in ethical consideration for endoscopy.
And we appreciate it, because here at this conference, there are many people who do clinical trials in our area of endoscopy and who would be interested, I think, to learn the European Union's perspective on these things. So let's start, and we have a couple of topics to go through. Let's start with, from your perspective, from Brussels, from the Union, which provides us with the framework for the work we do. What are your most burning topics with regard to ethical considerations for clinical trials in our area? Benefits, harms, patients, society, etc.
So, first of all, we need to be aware of the policy framework, what is the very important thing. In the European Union, we have a clinical trials regulation, 536 from 2002, what is relatively new, it's updated, but there is still some things to discuss. Because in the same time, we received the complaints even from patients about this, and even from clinicians that works directly with this regulation. Also,
so what are people complaining about? What are they unhappy with in the regulation?
There are many things, but from the clinicians' parts, there is many complaints about complications about some procedure, what they need to do before starting.
Too much bureaucracy?
Too much bureaucracy, and there is an urge to simplifying this process. And we're working on it because we want to make this available in some simple way, and to encourage to simplify everything what is possible. But it's complicated because it's not only this regulation. Then it's also connected with the directive for the medical devices, what is also very important, and there is also GDPR problems.
Right.
Because for transferring data between one institution to other, only if one country, and we will not discuss from the other countries, but it's complicated even with the two centers in the same country.
So let's just talk for a minute about GDPR, the data protection regulation of the European Union. Some years ago, that was a very, very big topic when the GDPR was introduced. And I think many countries were uncertain on how they should interpret the regulation. Some countries did it differently, which you just described made it and still makes it very difficult for us as clinical researchers to understand what kind of data we can share, who we can approach with regard to these questions. Do you see now, after some years, because the regulation is some years old, do you see that this topic is finally improving so that there is a more common understanding of what data we can share, or is it still a mess?
Let's say that there is still a mess because we receive every day so many questions about that. What I can share, what is the data, what is the protected, what if data are anonymized, and practically if a patient gives permission and gives informed consent, to share data is still possible or not. This is a still ongoing question because it's not unique protocol in all European countries.
Right.
And we need to also be aware that there is some sharing data outside of European Union.
Exactly.
And that is also important because there is no GDPR regulation.
Right.
And that is why it's complicated and it's still ongoing process because many questions are still addressed exactly for the data sharing. And practically now it's acceptable that if patient give access to data, that is possible to use this data for trials.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about devices. You mentioned the new MDR, the Medical Device Regulation, and also then what is a big topic at this conference, artificial intelligence. And some of these artificial intelligence tools are also medical devices, but there's also new AI legislations coming out from Brussels. Where do you see the major topics, the major problems, and the major solutions for both for the devices in general, but then also for the artificial intelligence testing, because this is about clinical trials?
Yeah, this is a new topic, and it's a hot topic because everybody today are focused on these possibilities, because for sure there are a huge range of possibilities to ensure patient safety, but in the same time patient safety is discussed in this, because if we have, for example, these algorithms inside for detection or something during endoscopy.
Yes,
there is
the
a
black
problem.
box problem. Yeah.
Exactly. There is a problem, for example, for algorithm transparency and how this is managed in the machine. And there is always what I need to highlight, because it's common, and this is the problem about legal process. If something goes wrong,
Yes.
responsibilities of machine of the person who use this machine. And in some cases, is for the patient is very important to know in the case that something goes wrong, who can sue it on the court.
So what is the union's objective on that? Who is responsible?
We
The man or the machine? And if it's a man or a woman, what woman? Like people like me who are standing there, or is it the people who designed the machine?
There is always a switching responsibility. Like, it's not me, it's machine, but machine cannot say, okay, it's me, it's my fault. So that is always raising questions, a very ethical consideration, and we have some ethical concerns even in our governing board of ethical commission, because there is a really big problem about this switching responsibility, and if it's possible that someone who works with the machine cannot be aware that there is still some problems that can arise from this. Even, of course, the machines can really help and be useful, but there is still also very fairness from the patient perspective.
Of course.
And they are not so happy with the machine diagnosis.
Yes.
And
there's overdiagnosis,
patients still
for
prefer
example.
the clinician's opinion and to discuss with the real people, woman or man, but with real people.
Yeah, yeah. So you're saying that still also, if we are using an artificial intelligence tool in our practice, we need to be aware of that the patient is still our responsibility, and we cannot blame the machine if something goes wrong, which is, I think, very important. Yeah. There's one specific topic, and you and I have discussed this before the show here, that you wanted to address, which I agree very much with, that is the use of sham in clinical trials. And of course, the use of sham, so sham for the audience is if you pretend to do something but then not doing it, which obviously is a way of doing a randomized controlled trial, for example, where you would do a colonoscopy in the arm of the people randomized to colonoscopy, but you would just pretend to do a colonoscopy in the other arm. So people are thinking they get a colonoscopy, but in fact, they don't get one. Can you explain a little bit about from your side, from the EU side, the ethical implications, and where would it be okay to consider sham, and where would it probably not be okay to consider sham?
Yeah, sham procedures in endoscopy, the situation is more complicated than the other specialties.
It is, yes.
Because it's not just take a pill and take placebo and
Yes.
we will see after how it's going. So this is the real situation where harm can occur. And also this new devices for therapeutic endoscopic interventions really can be something what is it's not good for the patients.
Right.
And not easy maybe even to accept, and that is why situation is more complicated, and there is a need for more strict position to do it or not to do it, and how to do it.
I agree.
Because there is still no good guidelines, in our opinion, about that. And what is the most important, to inform patients about these possibilities.
Yes.
For all things that happen and what is possible.
So are you on the union level with your ethical board? Are you working on a framework for this particular topic, for sham-controlled trials?
Yes, we're doing. We're starting to do new perspective for this. How to make it more clear, more transparent, because there still was not so easy to see it transparently. And there is a urge to change this kind of the protocols, guidelines for clinicians, when to do it, when not to do it, and how to inform patients about these procedures, because
yes.
it's here is more complicated than in other specialties.
It is,
and
absolutely.
It's not just a pill, and
no.
We need to think more outside of the.
Yes. And I think guidance from you in Brussels for the whole of Europe, I think is needed, because right now it's really up to the very local ethical committees to say yes or no to something, which could lead to very different practices in different countries, regions, cities in the union. Which is of
we
course
received so many questions exactly from clinicians, from the hospitals, right. And that's why we decide to go through this and to make new guidelines and protocol to set up it and make it easy for both, practically, for clinicians and also then for the patients, and to ensure patient safety.
Yeah. I think that would be appreciated. So let's shift gear towards the end here. So we have been talking about testing new things, new devices, new endoscopic treatment inside clinical trials, which there's a lot of challenges to it, just as we talked about, but still it is quite tightly regulated. Let's now talk about testing things in endoscopy. And we have a lot of industry partners here who are showing new instruments all the time, testing new things outside of clinical trials. So a company comes with something new, a new device, a new snare, whatever it is, and you have a patient where this would probably be a good idea to test, but there's no clinical trial. And I don't have a clinical trial. I don't know anybody else who has a clinical trial with this new thing. What do I do?
This is an interesting question, because is there a critically ill patient? And this is like he's on the edge, and this is the last hope. Yes. If you can offer something, probably the patient will accept any procedure that may help, like less hope. So first, there is a question about budget and about support for things what you want to do. Because if you don't have support, from academia or the hospital, then it can be a problem.
Yes.
But if you have support, and also there is a counter question, do you have really support from your institution for anything what you do? And in the case...
Also if it goes wrong.
If something goes wrong, if patients want to make a complaint against you, there is important to have support.
Yes.
And
so you should always check with your superiors if it's okay to do.
That is always important to have with superiors or even other colleague to have a sign together and not to do everything by yourself, just to have some other opinion. But the patients, they want something like this.
Of course.
Just there is another ethical concern and problem regarding this. It's equity, because unfortunately it's not the same in all the countries, and the possibilities to have this kind of treatment outside of clinical trials, it's not accessible for all patients. So it's not the same. And I'm sorry, for example, for some patients, they maybe can have this possibility, but not in their countries.
Right.
And there is also a problem with the insurance. But not only for them. There is one thing what I want also to highlight, and this is the insurance for clinicians, for researchers.
Exactly.
Because it's not, we don't like to talk about this, but in the situation when it comes to legal connections, complaints and something, you need to be sure that you have support from your institution and that you are covered for any errors that can occur, because everything after depends of the papers and of legal procedures.
And the documentation.
Documentation,
and
medical
I think patient
records.
Consent is very important.
Patient consent is always very important, because this is the one document what is a golden standard.
Right.
If something goes wrong, if you don't have this piece of paper, then you're really a big problem. And that is what I also want to highlight. Always document everything, every detail, and good medical records. It can save you of all these things what you...
And this all needs to be planned, right? You cannot set this up when you are standing there with the patient and you need to do something. You need to plan ahead, get the paperwork signed, get things documented, have a good informed consent process with the patient, and then you can talk to your bosses, and then you can probably do things.
Exactly, because in this situation where everything is perfect, so patients likes you, you are the best one. But if something goes wrong, then you are the worst one, and then they will do everything to complain and to make your life so complicated. So you don't want to you want to go outside of this. This is for sure.
Absolutely.
And not to be in the process of you need to have documentation. That is number one, and of course informed consent. What is the not always like patients told me usually, okay, informed consent is just like switching responsibility from clinicians to me. And so for me it's I need to have a good effort to explain that this is not switching responsibility, that this is the both parties agreement. And I also was once in this situation to give like expert witnessing opinion for one informed consent, when the patients told me, okay, I signed, but I didn't understand anything what was there, and I signed just because they told me to sign. And the clinician told me, of course, I explained everything. I spent half hour with this patient. And of course, it was words against words, and this is And
the paperwork decides what the truth is.
It's really difficult situation to find a balance between two parties, and that is why we need the regulations and everything.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, this ends our session. Thank you so much, Jasna, for having you. It was a great pleasure. And enjoy. I know that you're staying a couple of days longer. Enjoy the conference. There's a lot of interesting people to talk to. And thanks so much for sharing your insight and the insight of Brussels. Thanks.
Thanks you.